So today we're back talking some Miraculous Ladybug, and more specifically, one of the most integral aspects to the success and the popularity of the show itself, the romance. Whatever way you slice it, Miraculous is ultimately a love story. Yeah, there's superheroes in spandex fighting supervillains, abusive parents mistreating their kids, and classroom politics, and lots of drama, but at its core, we all know what it's about. It's that same running theme that features in pretty much every single episode across every single season. The love story of Marinette and Adrien in whatever format that manifests itself inside. The love square. Such a hugely popular concept, with each version of their relationship having its own fan base and moments and hype. And I mean, some are clearly more popular than others, and one is the very clear loser of the popularity contest. I'll let you figure out which one that is yourself. But in pretty much every discussion thread in the show's history, this is the constant. The people know what they want, and that is their awkward teen romance. However, that being said, in my eyes, it's also got to be one of the worst written romances of all time. Seriously, the show takes the cake at writing a terrible romance storyline. And it's insane to me, because the show has succeeded despite the writers seemingly have no desire to write an adequate romantic storyline. How is this even possible? I mean, I guess people got sucked into the story early on, and so no matter what happens, they're invested by this point. They were able to look past it all for the promised payoff. That vague point in the future where the story would kick into high gear and we'd all get all those story beats playing out on our screen and it would be epic and exciting. We'd all cry with joy. Perhaps the fan base was really huffing that hopium for a long time. And so I guess that's what I want this video to explore today. How the story really has no idea at all how to develop a compelling love story and yet has somehow failed upwards into one of the most popular ones in animation today. I guess the first element I want to look at is narrative pacing. The narrative pacing for the show in general is very bad, with story threads going missing for seasons at a time and then reappearing and getting rushed to the finish line. And our romance here, that's no exception. And of course, we're talking about the main ship, Adrien and Marinette, or Ladybug Cat Noir, or as I said earlier, any permeation of that theme. The show debuted in late 2015. That's when we're introduced to the concept of our main ship, that Marinette's in love with Adrien and Adrien's in love with Ladybug. Of course, without either of them knowing the truth behind all this, the real identities. And Season 1, in terms of pacing, does things quite well. International releases span from late 2015 into 2016, and really it just sets the scene. That's all the Season 1 ever really needs to do in my eyes. Set the scene, world build, and start to establish these relationships. There's never really any need to do much more than that. Because if you jump the shark too early, you run out of story, and it's clear that they were keen on saving the Love Square resolution for the future of the franchise. Because this and the Gabe mystery, they're really the most important story threads, and therefore they're the ones that are going to wrap up later in the story. But of course then you hit the snag, that apart from them becoming friends, nothing much else changes beyond tiny minuscule moments, and you sit on that for the next 4 or so seasons, years after years after years. Any massive progression being undone by the story. Time travel, losing your memory, all that sort of stuff. And so you sit around for literal years, wondering when they're actually going to start moving forward towards some sort of romantic couple situation. And spoiler alert, it took until like Season 5 for this to truly kick off. Literal years. 2015 to 2022, 2023? That's how long it took to see that storyline come to the forefront beyond pining and shared looks. Really, they should have started doing this in like Season 3 or something like that. Come on now. But instead we were blue-balled for years. Imagine being a young fan of this brand new show, only to wait until you're an adult for the main characters to even kiss or to confess their feelings. Damn. That's a very long time for the story to remain that stagnant. But at least there was one bright spot. About halfway through this empty void of story, we had the side ships start to crop up. And from the get-go, they seemed like a vessel, right? Luca and Kagami, they give Adrien and Marinette an alternate love interest to push the story forward. Maybe get some jealousy going, especially from Adrien, because who at that time hadn't even really acknowledged that he had romantic feelings for Marinette, instead being fixated solely on Ladybug. And I think this would have had a lot of long-term story potential, and since we had 3 seasons of very little development, it would have ramped up the drama during Season 4 and set the stage for Season 5 to deliver on Adrienette at long last. But what do they do with this potential? They backtrack it. They rush through it in 2 episodes, and then what is it? Oh, it's back to the status quo. Nice. Yep, all of that and it gets tossed into the trash and we get stuck in a holding pattern once again for the majority of season 4, waiting for season 5 to come along for the story to finally start to reach the satisfying stuff. I mean, I'm a fan of slow burn storylines, right? But when there's nothing much else going on with the story beyond those slow burns, suddenly it becomes a lot less interesting, and the franchise really did suffer for it. So already we see that the pacing of the romantic storylines is just ridiculously bad, based solely around the characters pining for one another with little progression for seasons on end, with any small crumb of progression or hope for the future instantly quashed and backtracked. But that's just one element I really don't like, because I think another major aspect of the storyline is that it's just kind of toxic. The way the romance is framed is very toxic. It's bad, it's negative, it's weird. Yes, there are a few decent relationships in the show, right? Tom and Sabine come to mind. I mean, how can you not find them wholesome? And then there's Nino and Alia, which in my eyes is also pretty wholesome. When they have issues, you see them work through it on screen, in a way that I'd say is pretty healthy for teenagers. But they're also super background without much depth. They're there as window dressing. They're there to make you smile at them for a second before the focus shifts back to the story at hand. But the reality is that our main relationship is hella toxic, very yucky indeed. I mean, Exhibit A, Marinette. She's a stalker, there's no doubt about it. She's thirsty and creepy, and she keeps a schedule of everywhere that Adrien would be at any given time. Info she can only get by stalking his social media or literally following him around every day, like one of those creepy, screaming fangirls of his do. Like, come on now. We all know this. We've all seen it. And a lot of people complain about it because it really does come across as very deranged. And that would be fine, right? If it was acknowledged as deranged by the narrative, but it's not. Instead, it's treated as a joke. Funny old Marinette. In the eyes of her friends, it's kind of cringy, but nothing more than that. And the show even goes so far as to try to justify all of her lunacy in season 5 by showing how Kim and Chloe had completely betrayed her trust and shattered her confidence. And that's why she's so obsessive, to ensure that Adrien's truly the person she thinks he is. And in the end, it all comes across as just being really weird and yuck. Ugh, no thank you. How they've managed to make her a popular romantic lead, despite how weird this shit is, I have no idea. It really is absurd. But that's not all, because there's also Adrien. And I'll acknowledge, it's sad to have to write this one because in almost every other respect, dude's perfect. Almost too perfect. But when he's trying to get with Ladybug, comes across very badly. Very bad optics. He can be abrasive and pushy, and he does not take no for an answer. Perhaps it ties back into the writing about how they never want to push the romance forward and keep everybody in limbo, but anytime he makes advances on Ladybug, he gets shot down. He then sulks, acts like a stereotypical nice guy, gets angry at her for not loving him that way, and then next episode is right back at it, trying to pressure her into a kiss or returning his feelings. Yuck! Not a great look for your main romantic interest. It's very toxic. It's very gross. Consent workshop. Please and thank you. And once again, it would be fine if it was treated the way it looks. As creepy and entitled and weird and sad. But it isn't. Plenty of times, the narrative tries to shift the sympathy to Cat Noir. They even have a sad song. One of the most iconic pieces of theme music in the show is specifically designed to make you feel bad for this dude. And then they have Plag regularly call out Ladybug for not appreciating him. More than once this happens. Appreciate this man who pushes your boundaries, Ladybug. You owe him. Yikes. Isn't this show about empowering girls? Whew. Not a good look if you ask me. Not at all. And so in the end, I'm left looking at this shit, and I'm wondering, how did they manage to take this romance between a creeper and a future sex pest, bloat it with almost no development for close to 5 seasons, and then call it a day, and yet somehow create one of the most popular and enduring ships of the late 2010s to early 2020s. It is the epitome of failing upwards, and yet they've done it. And I think you kind of have to commend them. Just for that alone. That despite seemingly being god-awful at writing a compelling romance with healthy characters, the show has still become so popular, largely off the back of this ship. And so yeah, there's really not much else to say beyond that, is there? And so with all that being said, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think about the state of the love story of Miraculous? Am I right? Or maybe I'm delusional and wrong. Maybe you completely disagree with me. I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.